So my name's Roraigh, and I've been studying Stanley Kubrick. But I was quite aware that I didn't want to just copy him for my project. I wanted to take some of his influences and kind of add them to my aorta theory, my style. So in my project, I've come up with my own idea. It's my own kind of themes and style. Yeah, I'm using a couple of his techniques through my project, which kind of just fit in with what I was doing, and sometimes I'm adding them in so they work here and work there. So the idea that I kind of came up with is a kind of Alice in Wonderland tea party in the woods. Basically, I had the idea that teenagers these days, well, not generally, but there is a certain specific set of teenagers and young people that are disconnected from reality, where they're just drinking and drugging and partying all the time, and they have basically a hedonistic lifestyle where they're not really thinking about consequences. And I've seen this through different shows that have been put on the TV recently. It's kind of themes that are starting to pop up in the TV, with shows such as Hotel Mum and Dad, and there's a show that talks about how young people are developing old people's bodies because the hard living they're putting their bodies stress through. So I wanted to use. So I had the idea of having this kind of tea party style that would mimic the style of kind of like a unreality. So this is kind of like my subtext. So I'm using the tea party as a kind of their party lifestyle and their drug dream state almost, which is like the underlying themes that suggest what they're actually going through, which is this detachment from reality, if that makes sense. So as part of this, I thought, so when they're within when they're within this kind of party state, this Alice in Wonderland style world, you have this very bleached white and colourful kind of, so it's very bleached white with kind of Pantone colours, whatever, primary colours. So this image kind of gave me the idea by Ezra Rose, where it's kind of, she's taking this kind of what could be like a drug, yet. So when they're not in this Alice in Wonderland state, this is where some of the Kubrick elements that I've picked up come through. So stuff like in Dr. Strangelove, where they have this very black and white kind of sharp contrast with the black and white. So I wanted to go from this colourful, fake reality to this dark, kind of very sharp relief kind of world where you have that. And that's a Kubrick element that he uses in Dr. Strangelove and The Day of the Fight. So going on to some of the other techniques I wanted to use within the Kubrick style. For the tea party itself, I thought I would be using the one-point perspective, which is another one of Kubrick's techniques. He uses this in most of his movies, as you can see here. It's actually a technique that was developed in the Italian Neo art. So you can actually even see it within, say, Jesus's table, final meal. So I thought I'd use this as a kind of a design for my tea party. So you see how you have the one-point perspective. So that's how one of the ways I'm implementing the Kubrick style into my own kind of project. And so another example of that is when I'm going to use a bunny rabbit. So I'm actually incorporating some of the Alice in Wonderland themes kind of running through this. So I'm going to have an elevator with a mirror in it, and so you can get that infinity reflection, which is part of that one-point perspective thing. And again, that's what's going to use both of his themes that I'm using with black and white as well, because the bunny rabbit's actually going to be unconscious in the elevator. So that's going to be that kind of draw between the reality and the thing. So for the characters, I've decided to kind of use the commedia dell'arte kind of stereotypes. So I'm kind of looking to use these kind of very archetypal characters within the false world. So a soldier wearing a red jacket, one of the military red jackets. Something like a clown, and so this came to my mind where they had this kind of almost it's toy-like, and that's what they're going for here. But it's similar to what I was trying to do. So when it's going through between this colourful and the black and white one, I had this scene where you have you have sugar cubes being dropped into the tea. But as the sugar cube, so I'll have a close-up of the sugar cube, and as it comes down to sugar cube, it turns into, say, a pill, which then lands in someone's mouth. So you have that, so it goes in between the two, so you have this kind of, so you actually understand that it's more than just two entirely different worlds. I think I'm nearly done. So the main parts was I wanted to play around with the unreality and the how these people don't really have an idea that they're actually have any consequence. Yeah, I think that's it for now. I may have gone through that kind of quickly.
No, that's fine. You have to go for a few questions. Do you want to start off?
Yeah, it's good. I like the fact that you've gone to those extra levels of consideration with it. So you've not just looked at Stanley Kubrick's films, but where, like you say, where his inspirations come from. In terms of what the images you've shown us from some of the Kubrick film with the flat perspective view, have you considered a bit? I like your Tea Party idea as well. It's being done in a forest. Is there anything about what Kubrick does where he takes very mundane places like hotels and housing estates and institutions and does something odd with them? Is there any scope, do you think, with that in terms of where you set your Tea Party?
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to use this, the one-point perspective, is because it doesn't quite sit well with you when you see it.
Yeah.
So the fact that you have this is more magical world with the one-point perspective makes you just really not like it in a way. So you kind of feel that something's wrong about it, which is kind of what I'm going for. Because I don't want to make it just feel completely sugar-coated, even though it looks sugar-coated. I want it to feel kind of wrong in a way. Okay. Which is one of the reasons why I thought that was a good.
So at this early stage in the process, what sort of things, other than that shooting angle, are you going to do that kind of makes the audience feel uncertain? Or what have you been inspired to think about in that way?
Well, there's a couple of other shots, like from, I haven't brought it up, but the Day of Glory, or whatever, which is another Kubrick movie where he has a long follow focus, not follow focus, what's it called? Steady cam shot. Yeah. Which he follows through a trench. I was thinking of using this. So basically, I'm going to have a shot where everyone that's coming into this false world comes down an elevator, which is essentially the hole, the rabbit hole. So when they come out of this elevator, I'm going to have essentially maybe the rabbit kind of come out first, and I'm going to have them all kind of running through the forest, and I'm going to follow him so you have him or her, I think it's a her, in the front of the focus, and I'm going to follow them through the forest, where you can kind of see everything moving past them until they get to this,
Okay.
which is another technique that I'll probably use.
Good. And yeah, final question on cinematography. Is there anything that you have been surprised about or really pleased to find out in your research so far in terms of camera work and things?
Well, it's been a learning curve, just kind of learning about how it happened, how it works, and how to do it. I mean, through my research, I even found the particular guy that actually did the camera movements for those shots. Apparently, it's a famous polyfocus person or whatever. Yeah. So that's interesting. So there's actually some research about him as a person, how he particularly uses the camera to go round corners in The Shining.
Okay.
It's a very particular way in how it's done, which I actually tried replicating when I did test shoots with it when I was. So yeah. So I've been trying to do a couple of test shoots where I'm trying to emulate these techniques.
Fantastic.
Do you know, obviously, with the elevator idea, that's obviously come from you yourself, hasn't it? The elevator idea, just like the mirror, obviously going down towards the forest and straight.
Well, I was in the elevator and I was like, oh, I could use this in.
Because the film, like, I like the transport, they're called Jabberwockies, which they got the name from Alice in Wonderland.
Right.
And they used a title underneath saying a figment of your imagination, which is what the film's about, it's imagination. But I do like the fact that you're using that, like as the elevator to go down into the forest instead of actually falling. It sounds good.
And a bit like, because I've also been looking also through Kubrick's entire career. So I looked at kind of a breadth of his movies, and his earlier ones he worked with a writer. He had a writer-producer friend. So I'm actually getting a writer in to help me, because I'm more of a cinematographer, so I'm actually going to help. But even though he's going to write essentially this for me, I still want it to be quite picture focused, like Kubrick. And I want to drive the story and characters mostly with the images. Even though it doesn't really do justice to the writing, but I want it to be mostly kind of visual.
Excellent. So how far along is your story?
Me and Sam have discussed kind of everything up to kind of, we started just designing characters that we're going to try have in the story. So I kind of thought that maybe I have 60-40, so 3 girls, 2 boys, have 5 characters, and then maybe include the rabbit in those characters, or rabbit as an extra character. I haven't really decided on that yet. But I was thinking like having a character that's trying to be funny. So in the false world, he'd be something like a clown, and then in the real life, he wouldn't be funny. He'd be like someone trying to be funny too hard or something. And then there'd be like a military person, so somebody that, so he'd be wearing a military jacket, and then so there'd be kind of these. So I'd use these archetypes in the false world to create a real version of them in the dirty, gritty, real world, essentially. So we play against these kind of problems that are having. Does that make sense? Yeah. The only thing I'm having difficulty is where to add the most narrative, like story, like driving changes, like with the actual dialogue. And I'm not sure what to make heavier, like the dream world dialogue, or to make, because I'm not sure where to add dialogue, because I want to make sense.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of I suppose one of the powerful things about Kubrick is that it is that mundanity. The dialogue is often it's either a domestic situation or like Dr. Strangelove is surprisingly like mundane in what they're talking about and the way they talk about it, and yet the situation's ridiculous and big. And Clockwork Orange is the same. So it's like almost like you say, getting the characters right, thinking about how they would talk to one another in a very mundane sort of everyday sort of way, and then let your visuals and your all of that do the rest of the most unsettling.
The way I like to do things is to create an entire world and then let that story progress within that world that I've made.
Yeah, so might be working with your actors a bit more than maybe saying this is definitely what the dialogue's going to do. It might be that you
Because then I can leave it more up to the actors and get
Yeah.
the characters to develop naturally within the world that I created.
Oh, good.
Because that seems, it's almost documentary in a way, but
Mm.
in that S, but it's not because I'm totally creating a world that these people sit in.
Good.
Questions?
So how are you going to limit the size of this? Because obviously we've got between 10 to 20 minutes for the final
Yeah.
project, and you tend to develop an idea that could run and get bigger. How are you going to kind of keep it manageable?
Well, the main scene is this kind of this unreality Disneyland, not Disneyland, Alice in Wonderland world. So that's going to be the main piece, and then they're going to have little bits of black and white kind of offshoots where they're finding themselves in, the real world. I originally kind of planned it to be kind of very arty and very kind of off the wall niche, and then my writer's trying to bring me back and make it make more sense.
That's interesting. That kind of fight is almost, that's almost a metaphor for the fight within the story between the real world and the fantasy world as well, which is quite nice. So it's always good when
and it's nice to have that collaboration at this stage where you've got
definitely.
that you and your writer are kind of coming at it from different points of view.
Because I came up with the elevator, but Sam came up with the idea of the elevator being the hole into Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Even though I'd already come up with the elevator in the Wonderland, I hadn't made that connection between that being the hole.
And also, you mentioned something about knowing someone who can help you with some of the visual effects that you're coming up with. So, one concern I would have quite often would be, okay, we've got the sugar cube then turned into a peeler scale, so how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
I thought you mentioned something about a solution to that. Have you talked to someone, or have you found a way through
the
that?
guy that's just coming downstairs, he's an animator and visual effects artist, so he's pretty good at this kind of thing. So he said he might be able to work out a way of doing the elevator thing for me, which is cool. Because I kind of wanted to have an elevator that came down from the skies, down into this field or this forest.
It does sound random, but like, have you ever got a sugar cube and tried cutting it in half? Or you could try and cut it in half, stick a pill, stick it back on, drop it. Because it dissolves in the water, doesn't it, the sugar?
But it depends on how visualising it.
Yeah, no, just wondering.
Because I had this idea, you kind of pick up the sugar cubes and drop it as it's falling. So I'd have this close-up of the falling sugar cube. It might even be 3D, that might be a better way of doing it. So you have this 3D sugar cube that's falling, and then that's just cuts into some kind of hill that lands on our tongue instead of the water.
Yeah, because I think the thing you've got to do at this stage is be looking at kind of, well, actually, that's an idea, can I do that? And if you find a way to actually achieve that with the resource you've got, then that stays in. And if you can't, it has to go out, and that quite often can really help with the story thing. So we've got this massive idea, and the way you get it manageable is by taking out the stuff that you really can't do. As I mean, there's all kinds of ways of doing stuff, and having the connections for who to work on is really, really good at this stage.
But where is it? Because I was looking at how, the one-point perspective came from, the arts realism, whatever. I kind of felt that it might be really interesting so that like the first time you see this table in the forest, it does actually look like a painting.
Yeah.
So when in some of my research, there's actually you can see where they added in the one-point perspectives.
Yeah.
So you can actually see where it is in the paintings. So if I can frame it in the right way, it will actually kind of almost feel like it's a painting. So I want to really push this kind of unreality and this unnatural feel. So that's kind of what I'm going for.
Okay, is that kind of thing going to be almost using the same kind of camera techniques in both worlds to tie them together, or are you going to be using very different? So you have that one-point perspective in one world, but a different.
Well, I wanted to try and create one world that was very candified and sugar-coated and bleached and bright, and the other which was quite dark and kind of very high contrast kind of.
So stylistically very different from that.
Yeah, definitely.
Production design point of view.
Yeah, definitely. The main point for me, because I'm a cinematographer, first thing I thought was, okay, so one was going to be bleach colours with the primary three colours as main focus, and then the other one's going to be black and white with, and then Sam came up with the idea of maybe having one element in the black and white world, which is the colour. So one element that draws you back into the other world. So say a record player in the black and white world gets brought through into the magic world or whatever. So you have little elements that twig your kind of thought process, so you can understand that they are connected. Which is again quite clever. Which is why it's useful to have a writer that starts to elaborate on the things that you start doing, which is really cool for me because I haven't done it before.
Any more questions?
No,
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Okay, so just want to stop that, and what we'll do, if you guys go off for a break, we'll just finish off I'll put conflict for Dave so we can...
Yeah.
I'll find the off button.